In 1724, a British author by the name, or at least pseudonym, of Captain Charles Johnson wrote a general history of the robberies and murders of the most notorious pirates. The first definitive, written account of the Pirates of the Caribbean. The real ones. Not Johnny Depp, not Ian McShane. No, this is the book that introduced Blackbeard to the world and became the primary source for future biographies of the notorious 18th century sea marauder. Johnson's description of Blackbeard is epic. Captain Teach assumed the nickname of Blackbeard for the large quantity of hair which, like a frightful meteor, covered his whole face and frightened America more than any comet that has appeared there in a long time. This beard was black, which he suffered to grow to an extravagant length. As to breadth, it came up to his eyes. He was accustomed to twist it with ribbons and small tails and turn them about his ears. In time of action, he wore a sling over his shoulders, with 3 brace of pistols hanging in holsters like bandoliers, and stuck lighted matches under his hat, which appearing on each side of his face, his eyes naturally looking fierce and wild, made him altogether such a figure that imagination cannot form an idea of a fury from hell to look more frightful. Who the fuck was this Fruit Loop? Lit matches under his hat? Ribbons in his crazy hobo hipster ZZ Top beard? 3 different pistols hanging off his chest. Was this guy a real pirate? Or some dude who just took his community theater role way too seriously? Well, shiver me timbers and avast ye time suckers to the dread and horror that awaits all ye who trespass on this yo-ho-ho-ho, a pirate's life for me edition of Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Ahoy, Timesuckers. Thanks for continuing to suck a little harder each and every week. Spreading some of that sweet, sometimes salty suck to coworkers, family, friends, enemies, traveling salesmen, Jehovah's Witnesses, ghosts, apes capable of sign language, space lizards controlling our every thought and move. Love all the new subscriptions, messages for show ideas sent to admin at timesuckpodcast.com. And, of course, the iTunes reviews. Sweet Jesus, you guys want to suck some L. Ron. You want to suck yourself some Hubbard so bad. The Scientology episode is dropping this Friday. That's right, bonus episode this week. Friday at noon Pacific time, because you all took the iTunes reviews from 300 to 400 in lightning fashion. The Third Reich 300 bonus review episode was released March 10th, and now 3 weeks later, Scientology edition comes out March 31st. Thanks for making the extra suck happen. And when we hit 500 episodes, we're going to explore none other for our next bonus episode than Pablo motherfucking Escobar. How about that? Huh? Hero to some, enemy to others, drug lord to all. We're going to dig into his complicated history, find out if Pablo worked for the CIA, among other interesting details of his life. Well, thanks to Sarah Lilly via Timesuck email for suggesting a Timesuck on pirate strongholds like Tortuga, which we'll get into today, and to Serene via the Timesuck message board for suggesting Blackbeard himself, who she called the, quote, dickhead of the sea, which made me smile very much. Extra big thanks to those of you who clicked on the PayPal button on timesuckpodcast.com, donated to the show. Thanks to those who clicked on the Amazon button, helped out the show while you shop for some batteries, maybe some laundry detergent, maybe some Ginsu knives, maybe some butt plugs. I don't know. Whatever you're into. That's your business. And thanks for all those orders of that classic first-generation Timesuck t-shirt made out of 100% real baby skin. I know we sold out of some sizes, but don't worry. I'm getting more made as you listen to this episode. And those of you who encountered insane shipping rates last Monday know that problem is now fixed. Thanks to those of you who brought it to my attention. There was a glitch in the store, one of those little troubleshooting bugs when you first open something, and you're no longer going to be asked for, $25 to ship a single goddamn $25 t-shirt. It's a little steep, a little rich. You may get some blood on your shirt now, though, because my sweet merch man was savagely beaten for this error. I'm talking like within an inch of his life beaten. Yeah, no worries. He'll ship those shirts from his intensive care hospital room, or I'll stomp his goddamn head in. And remember, it says on the website that the sizes run a little bit small. So if you normally wear a large, get an extra large. Unless you like rocking that baby skin tight, so tight. Then in that case, you do you, mama. You live your life. And now, before we set sail on today's sweet, sweet episode, let's catch up real quick on some Timesucker updates.
Updates? Get your Timesucker updates.
All right, first update comes from several Timesuckers. Bryce, Rich, Michael Moss, Nick Eber, Chris Glover, Christopher James, host of the Fun and Movie Nerds We Trust podcast, and I'm sure some others I missed. Let me know that Shaq has joined the Flat Earth Revolution. That's right, Shaquille O'Neal, the MDP, most dominant player of his generation, the man who barely made half his career free throws, the man who would have never made it into the NBA at all if he was 6'6" or shorter, the rapper known as Shaq Diesel. He is a Flat Earth believer. He's on the NBA Flat Earth Dream Team along with Kyrie Irving. On his podcast, 7 feet and 350 pounds of dumb. Wait, that's not the right title. It's The Big Podcast with Shaq. Shaq says, quote, "It's true. The earth is flat. The earth is flat. Yes, it is. Listen, there are 3 ways to manipulate the mind. What you read, what you see, and what you hear. In school, first thing they teach us is, oh, Columbus discovered America. But when he got there were some fair-skinned people with long hair smoking on some peace pipes. So what does that tell you? Columbus didn't discover America." Columbus did not discover other European settlers, you fucking halfwit. Seeing people with a bit lighter shade of skin does not equate to running into the descendants of Viking colonists. What does fucking peace pipe, by the way, have to do with anything? Not sure where he got that info from. Probably read it in a text sent to him from noted historian Kyrie Irving. Okay, then he goes, "So listen, I drive from coast to coast, and this shit is flat to me." I'm just saying, I drive from Florida to California all the time, and it's flat to me. I do not go up and down at a 360-degree angle and all that stuff about gravity. Have you looked outside Atlanta lately and seen all those buildings? You mean to tell me that China is under us? China is under us. It's not. The world is flat. What the fuck? First off, you idiot. No one goes up and down at a 360-degree angle because 360 degrees isn't an angle. It's a goddamn circle. You wouldn't go up and down. You go around. Oh, my God. Kind of like how shitty half-thoughts float around your big, dumb, giant head. Shaq is worth roughly $350 million. He made almost $300 million off NBA contracts alone, proving yet again that rich and successful do not equate to intelligent or insightful. What the fuck? This is why we need to figure out how to curb the cost of higher education and make critical thinking classes part of every single degree's core curriculum. Of course the road is flat, you giant imbecile. It's a very big globe. The curve is undetectable over short distances. God damn it. In the recent words of astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, the Earth isn't fucking flat. I love that he said that. All right, bunch of updates on the ISIS episode. Too many to get into here, but I'm just going to say that everyone, whether they agreed or not, was super cool. I learned a lot more about Islam from the messages I got and ISIS. And the issue of Islamic extremism is complex, to say the least. Maybe ISIS is a bigger threat to the West than I realize. I've never been over there like a lot of my listeners have, many of whom were deployed. So I don't have that firsthand military perspective. And, on no one outside of their actual members can actually truly understand their exact motivations and intentions. Beware of puppy scams. This is another update. A Timesucker named Stu wrote in and told me that he and his wife got scammed by a Nigerian con artist posing as a puppy breeder. This guy Stu paid $280 to have a Siberian Husky shipped from Maryland, but then it didn't show up. The fake breeder then messaged to say that there was a problem with shipping, that the cargo area on the plane in Maryland was too hot in Maryland in the winter, and they needed to get an air-conditioned crate. That's going to be another $800. Stu was listening to the Nigerian email scam podcast episode as this shit was going down, told his wife, do not send the $800, got on the phone, figured out how to get a hold of this dude on the phone, tore into him, lit him up, said had a bunch of coworkers call him from about 10 different numbers, or he called him from coworkers' phones, about 10 different numbers, and I'm sure he's probably talking to some dude in Lagos, Nigeria, thousands of miles from Maryland, some asshole. Well, he didn't get his $280 back, but he saved $800 thanks to Timesuck. So, see, Timesuck, man. Saving Timesuckers money. I love it. And finally, a quick Bigfoot update. This is from Timesucker Pat Nabel, who sent me the following information on Facebook. And I'm sharing it just because I find it so goddamn funny and interesting. This is Bigfoot, maybe he's real after all. I just didn't understand him when I recorded my Sasquatch versus Loch Ness Monster episode. So Pat says, Bigfoot, according to some quote-unquote researchers, I love that Pat put researchers in quotes there, is a fourth-dimensional being that can travel through space and time. According to others, Bigfoot may actually be one of the protectors/guardians of a species of aliens known as the Grey. The Grey are a species of aliens that have large black eyes and gray skin, much like the aliens depicted in modern media. And others believe that Bigfoot is actually the pilot for these aliens ships, UFOs sent down from Earth to scout the planet. Other researchers believe that Bigfoot is an engineered race of aliens sent down to Earth to scout the planet. Going with this theory, they believe that Bigfoot can travel through the fourth dimension to relay information. And then, quote, Spats wrote, they can master interstellar space travel but have no idea how to make a fucking radio. Exactly. These quote-unquote researchers go on to say that every Bigfoot sighting correlated with UFO sightings. And then, parenthetical, most of the websites I obtained my research from were no better than the websites that had the word crystal in the site name. Man, it's so good. So good. Grown-ups not living in mental institutions doing research on the link between Sasquatch and extraterrestrials. Fuck, I love weirdos. How boring would the world be without them? Man, Sasquatch, he's a space ape. Well, thanks for the extra suck, time suckers.
Thanks, time suckers. I needed that.
We all did. All right, so let's get into the million gold bullion question. Who the fuck was Blackbeard? I don't know. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's all for today. Actually, no one really knows for sure who Blackbeard was. Early records of his life are fuzzy at best, which I think is kind of cool. Like, it adds to the mystique of his legend, you know? He wasn't born. He just walked up from the bowels of hell, fully formed, just, matey, drop your weapons. I am the dread demon pirate Blackbeard. Yeah, no goofy throwback Thursday picture of a young Blackbeard with, like, no beard, lanky, odd, adolescent body, full of acne on his face, but peach fuzz where a thick black beard should be, you know, home-cut mullet where a pirate's hat should rest. No childhood scrapbook to kind of shit on old Blackbeard's mystique. Most historians believe he was born in Bristol, England in 1680. In a recent 2015 book on the pirate, Blackbeard reconsidered Miss Piracy, Thatch's genealogy, by Bayless Brooks, a Carolina historian who dug into Blackbeard's family history more thoroughly than anyone else from what I can tell. Brooks seems positive that Blackbeard's real name was Edward Thatch, although Captain Johnson and other historical authors ascribe his last name as being Teach. Well, Thatch or Teach was most likely born in Bristol, and then his family moved to Jamaica at some point during his childhood. Spain had formerly ceded Jamaica to the British in 1670 after the British took it over in 1665. Remained a British colony all the way until 1962, by the way. And this Thatch was listed as a mariner or sailor in the Royal Navy aboard the HMS Windsor in 1706. It's the first actual record that seems to float around of this guy. Well, a lot of guys were mariners back in 1706, which was smack in the middle of the golden age of piracy, a historical period of plank walking. Actually, there's not actually a lot of plank walking references. I think that's a Hollywood thing. But it lasted roughly from 1650s to the 1730s in and around Americas. This period of history began with the end of the European Wars of Religion in 1648. Between 1524 and 1648, a series of wars broke out as Europe was being reshaped by the division of the Catholic Church, Lutheran Church, and Calvinists within the Holy Roman Empire. A series of treaties were resolved between May and October 1648 in what became known as the Peace of Westphalia, ending the 30 Years' War in the Holy Roman Empire, and the 80 Years' War between Spain and the Dutch Republic, and numerous other battles. 109 different delegations were represented, 109 groups of people who were like, can we please stop this shit? We are tired of killing each other. Can we please focus on killing some Indians instead? And everyone was like, yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I like that. Yeah, let's go get those savage heathens, take some of their shit instead. So now Europe is done terrorizing itself on its own soil for a little while, at least in mass. And it focuses on what had started at the end of the 15th century with Columbus's initial voyage terrorizing indigenous people it encountered abroad. And of course, it goes back to fighting each other, but at least it's doing it in the Americas, instead of, within Europe for a couple minutes. And because Europe was now focused more intently on colonization, a lot more ships were heading out to sea. Ships bringing slaves from Africa to work all the new colonial plantations, transporting various goods to and from the Americas. In the late 17th century, the transatlantic triangular trade routes were developed. And here's how that worked. Sugarcane and the products sugarcane created, such as sugar and rum, became important exports for the new Caribbean colonies. Rum in particular, the drink I think is most associated with pirates, right? Like, I don't picture Blackbeard throwing back tequila shots, having a gin and tonic, maybe a vodka soda. I mean, pirates aren't knocking back margaritas. They're drinking rum straight from the rum bottle. And rum became very popular, and in order to get support for the massive consumer demand for it, or in order to support the massive consumer demand for it, along with the growing demand for sugar in general, we love us some sugar. Those teeth aren't going to rot themselves out. More plantations had to be developed, and so more slaves were imported to work these plantations. This demand helped establish the transatlantic triangular trade. which saw the movement of manufactured goods such as guns, luxury goods, cloth, beer, and iron to be exported from Europe to West Africa, where they were traded with local kingdoms and tribes for slaves that would be sent to the New World. From West Africa, luxury goods such as gold, ivory, spices, and hardwoods would all be brought back to Europe. The slaves from West Africa were then brought to the Caribbean and British North America, where they were sold at various slave markets. Ships would then pick up products such as sugarcane and its products such as sugar, molasses, and rum, and head to either British North America or back to Europe. If they were headed to British North America, merchants could also pick up goods such as whale oil, furs, and hides, along with natural resources such as lumber, indigo, tobacco, silk, even rice, before heading back to Europe to sell everything at a massive profit. And if you're wondering why I didn't mention cotton, well, cotton really didn't get going in the American South until later in the early 1800s. Goods would also go from North America to West Africa, such as rum, iron, gunpowder, cloth, and tools. So a lot of valuable shit being floated around the Atlantic all of a sudden. A lot of boats carrying a lot of goods. And so with the rise of all these valuable goods being shipped around the Atlantic, the regular trade routes being set up to get these goods to the proper ports, the rise of pirates followed. You know, just a little yo, ho, 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 a pirate's life for me. Still love that Disneyland ride, by the way. Pirates of the Caribbean, a lot of good memories, scaring the hell out of my son, Kyler, on that one. He'd always be like, Dad, don't scare me this time. I'd be like, yeah, no, sure. No, of course not. Of course not. And then as soon as we'd push off in the dark in the little boat, I just start mumbling stuff. Like, man, I can't believe they captured some real pirates who snuck in here last week. And he'd be like, Dad, stop it. I'd be like, no, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. I mean, we're safe. They only killed a few people. I mean, he'd be like, Dad. I'm like, no, dude, we're fine. No one's even died in this ride since yesterday. Oh, memories. Oh, sweet memories. Okay, so the first wave of pirates were the Buccaneers. And Buccaneers is an anglicized version of the French word Buccaneer. And Buccaneers were, as defined by Merriam-Webster, any of the freebooters preying on Spanish ships and settlements, especially in 17th century West Indies. Broadly, pirates. So, West Indies, Caribbean. And to build some context for the world of piracy and the Caribbean climate, Caribbean, however you want to say it, the Blackbeard was born into, let's set sail. Let's drop right into a cold, black heart of a little Timesuck timeline.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
Okay, so 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Spain had settled the large island of Hispaniola, present-day home of Haiti in the Dominican Republic, 22nd largest island in the world, way back with Christopher Columbus back in 1492, and immediately fucked up life for the native Taino people, who numbered somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million when he got there, and then by 1507, there was 14,000 left. Just 15 years later, wow, went from, possibly 1 million to 14,000. That's some serious colonial genocide. Enslavement, smallpox, redistribution of their natural resources to European colonial goals did not do the Taino people any favors. Well, the Spanish settle and control most of the Caribbean, but other European players like England and France, for example, they want to make some of that sugar money too, make some of that sugar cash, make some of those syrup dollars, maybe print some of those sweet bills. They want some of that conquistador gold Spaniards have been gathering up in Mexico and South America, shipping across the sea. And other European players, they take some little colonization shots for their damn selves. Well, 1625, French settlers established a colony in the nearby island of St. Kitts. They'd like Hispaniola too, but there's too many Spaniards. So they sail on, go a little further. Eventually, they find the little island that Columbus had named Tortuga because it reminded him of a turtle shell. There's only a few Spanish colonists on the island, so they start setting up shop. 1629, the Spaniards decide that they don't like the French hanging around on Tortuga. Speaking their Frenchy bullshit, taking American jobs, trying to keep America from getting great again. Wait a minute, I'm getting confused. The Spaniards, but they don't like the silly French fucks, setting up sugar plantations, throwing their weight around like they own the place, and they attack the French, and they force the French colonists living there to flee into the woods and hide, creating a new breed of French hillbillies, which sounds awesome. 1630, Spanish forces fortified the island of Tortuga, but not being a large island, about 69 square miles. 69, ultimate suck number. A lot of these square miles are rocky and not suitable for farming. This little rocky crag about 15 miles off the northern coast of present-day Haiti isn't a priority for the Spanish. And when they go over, to fuck over some Indians in North American mainland, see what kind of cultural damage they can do on the Florida Peninsula, those French hillbillies snuck on back down to our woods, man. There's, woo-woo, we're going to take over the fort, man. Go get those Spaniards. Go now. Go scat. Go get. We are taking back the forts. Well, the Spaniards and the French, they go back and forth for a couple years. But not all the French forces fighting the Spaniards are actually French military. Basically, the semi-stranded French colonists don't have proper support from the French government in that area. Right, this little island with a few little French hillbillies isn't like a priority for France. They're not going to be like, hey man, send all of our fucking ships to Tortuga. Save those those hillbillies, those Creole hillbillies. I guess it's not technically Creole, but that's what I think of in my head. And so these militants, kind of on their own, they become the first true buccaneers, and they kind of have to kind of fight the Spanish, by themselves. And at first, these buccaneers. They're just little French hill folk, kind of hiding from Spanish soldiers, little guerrilla warfare, fighting done on land. But eventually they get some ships equipped with some guns, and then they start attacking some Spanish ships, and they start having a little bit of success, which gives them even more ships. So many ships, a lot of ships. And now some of this attacking is done on survival, but when they take the loot the ships are carrying, it's not like they're sending it back to France, who's not helping them anyway. It's not like they're aiding the monarchy. They just keep it. And then they sell their goods to other colonists in the area. They got a little business going. So now the Spaniards, of course, see them as a problem, see them as criminals, obviously. But the French see them as some sort of like patriotic militia, advancing France's colonial interests by frustrating Spain's colonial efforts. So and soon, it's not just the French. There's British settlers have now arrived on the island in small numbers. Many of them attacking the Spaniards as well. Everybody's attacking the Spaniards. Soon, various mariners from France, England, Denmark, and elsewhere, all seeking adventure and possible fortune, arrive on the island of Tortuga to live as buccaneers. And soon, not only did France and England not mind the buccaneers attacking the Spanish, but then as they became more skilled in warfare and captured larger ships, various European countries gave certain buccaneer captains letters of marque, which is a written permission giving the owner governmental authority to capture or destroy property belonging to a certain group or nation. So now they're official hired guns of England, France, etc. These buccaneers are now privateers. Privateer defined as an armed ship owned and officered by private individuals holding a government commission and authorization for use in war, especially in the capture of enemy merchant shipping. Right? So they basically the France is like, yeah, man, if it's a Spanish merchant trying to make a little money, fuck, go get him. You go get that conquistador, son of a bitch. You go get Johnny Sanchez, take his ship. Fucking Ponce de Leon, what's his name, I don't think Ponce de Leon had shit to do with this. 1639, the French colonists of Tortuga requested the French governor of St. Kitts, Philippe de Poincy. What a silly little name. Mr. de Poincy, you have a telegram, Mr. de Poincy. They request French governor, de Poincy, to send reinforcements and supplies to the Tortuga governor, Jean Levasseur. That's fucking French as shit right there, man. I don't know how you can get a more French name than Jean Levasseur. And he does, and the French expand existing Spanish fortifications into Fort de Rocheur on a rocky outcrop overlooking a natural harbor on the island. Now, being aware of the numerous earlier Spanish raids, Levasseur, an engineer by trade, he builds one hell of a fort. This is super awesome. He builds a pirate fort that young boys fucking dream about. God, I wish I had a fort like this. I still do. I still wish I had a fort like this. I would spend so much time in this fort if I had it. I would just hang out, I would just fucking read comic books in my fucking Spanish, whatever, not even Spanish, my French island rocky cliff fort. But check this out. It was erected on the flat top of a hill that was crowned by steep rock about 30 feet high. Levasseur shaped terraces into the hillside that could hold hundreds of men, little fighting terraces. On top of the rock, he placed his own palace, several cannons, a storehouse for ammunition, a carved stairway, reaches halfway up the rock, and then visitors had to climb the rest of the way by a ladder which was raised or lowered from the top. How cool is that? I want a fort like that, man. I really want it. I could just stay up there. I got my graphic novels. I could just have like my laptop. I could just watch some Netflix. I'll get some fucking Wi-Fi in there. If my kids and my wife are being cool, if they're being fucking cool and they're going to want to watch the show I want to watch, I'll lower the ladder. But if they're being annoying and they want to watch some bullshit, then the ladder stays up, okay? The ladder stays up, and me and my little dog Penny, we hang out, and we wait for them to decide if they're going to be cool. And me and Penny, we're going to have matching pirate hats. I'm going to have a pirate hat. Penny's going to have a little tiny matching pirate hat. Maybe Penny's going to wear a little eye patch, little puppy eye patch. I don't know. All I know is that I'm really enjoying this fantasy right now. Well, the real fort was even supplied by water gushing forth from a natural spring on top of this hill. God, it's fucking great. Levasseur had see now what I would do is now I would get a drone. I would have a little thing of drones that I could just go get food for my drones. I don't even have to ever leave it. I'll just shit off the edge of the cliff. Whoever's living below can deal with that. You know what I mean? Now Levasseur, he's constructed an impregnable fortress. He then cut all of his ties with France, and during the next decade or so, just reigns over the island like a Buccaneer king. He's a pirate king. It's awesome. He takes a percentage of all the Buccaneer loot brought into Tortuga, amasses a small fortune in stolen jewels and treasure. Oh, man. Well, having created infrastructure on the island, the land surrounding the fort became worthy plantation fields, and Levasseur also sold plantation land to entrepreneurs. Also, before cutting ties with France, he wrote to France, check this out, he offered to take their, quote, undesirable ladies if the French prison system wished to empty their dungeons of female prostitutes, thieves, and petty criminals. Oh, my God. You see, he had too many dudes on the island. It was getting to be too much of a sausage fest, and shit was getting reckless. Too much testosterone on that island, too many fucking fights breaking out. So he's like, let's sail over some prostitutes. Let's sail over some disreputable women. Let's get them over to the pirate island, settle these boys down a bit. And Levasseur hoped that the arrival of women, would get some of the Buccaneers to kind of settle down a little bit, maybe have a more manageable life at planting, working those little plantation things, starting families. A few did. Most men held fast to the life of stealing from the Spanish. It was way more exciting. So in a matter of few years, the town of Cayenne has grown up around Levasseur's rock fort. Taverns and inns abound. These were wild, lawless, rough, and dirty places full of drunkenness and wickedness of the most varied forms. After a night of carousing and visiting houses of prostitution, men would lay drunk in unpaved streets. Occasionally, after drunken skirmishes, be slumped up against buildings just bleeding to death. Fights and grudges over anything were settled routinely with crossed swords, pistols, ambushes, knives, daggers, throat cutting, every other form of revenge. This place sounds fucking terrifying and awesome. Thanks to Levasseur, Tortuga became like the pirating capital of the Caribbean. God, that's so insane to me just to picture this place, right? Just this crazy little town on this little island with this rock fortress and just brothels and bars and people just trading their stolen loot for a night with a lady of the night or some rum. Just it's insanity. Well, before long, the Spaniards they were getting tired of having their ships fucked up by Tortuga's pirates, and they feared in time the French might achieve a position strong enough to force the Spanish out of Hispaniola, in much the same way that they had done on Tortuga. In Hispaniola, much bigger island, much more room for crops and goods and everything, much more important to them. And so the Spaniards at Santo Domingo sent ships with 500 men to destroy the new fort. Well, the artillery stationed at the fort sank one of the ships, scattered the rest. When the Spanish troops eventually landed away from the harbor, they fell into an ambush, lost almost 200 men, fled back to their ships, and then fled back to Hispaniola. Wow. So news of this victory spreads Levasseur's reputation far and wide, and now Tortuga becomes more of a haven for anyone having trouble with the law. The island of Tortuga became, quote, the common place of refuge for all sorts of wickedness, the seminary of pirates and thieves. Wow, man, what a crazy place. If I could just, know that I wouldn't get hurt, I so would want to get in a time machine and just fucking pop into this little Tortuga town, right? Just for a little bit, check it out, check out the fort, and then get out of there, before I get a dagger in the back. Okay, in the 1640s, throughout the next several years of the 1640s, Tortugan pirates continued to harass the Spanish. Not only were the Tortugan buccaneers plundering vessels along the shipping lanes around Hispaniola and the surrounding area, they were also provisioning their ships for the journeys by raiding the Hispaniola farms. They're just fucking taking everything. Just doing what they want to do and sneaking on back to Tortuga. Giving a little wave of the flag to the rock fort dude, and that dude's like, yeah, you guys are thieves? And we're like, yeah, we're thieves. We're like, well, get in here then. If you're coming there like, hey, you guys thieves? Like, no, we wouldn't steal anybody's stuff. Get the fuck out of here. This is Tortuga, you son of a bitch. You get on back to Hispaniola, where people respect law. 1653, protected from the outside world, Levasseur was eventually killed by a couple of his own henchmen. Oh, man. Levasseur left the fort. That's his first mistake. And last mistake, he left his fort. Once you get a super cool rock fort, the first rule of having a super cool rock fort is don't leave the super cool rock fort. That's the first, second, and third rules of having a super cool rock fort. Well, he did leave. He went to inspect a warehouse with two of his lieutenants, and one of them was enraged by the fact that earlier Levasseur had stolen away his young mistress and abused her, and the guy stabbed him. stabbed him with some daggers, killed him. Well, that was another mistake he made. If you're going to leave your rock fort, you definitely don't leave it with a fucking dude who you had just stolen his young mistress away previously and somehow abused her. I don't even want to know what that means. Not smart, man. He's drunk on power. Just thought he was above death. Well, new governor, Chevalier de Fontenay, was sent by De Poincy. De Poincy is still around, wearing his fancy silk blouses. He was sent from De Poincy, from St. Kitts to try and clean up Tortuga. However, once he got there, he realized, oh man, it's fucking pretty cool being lawless. And so he just welcomed Buccaneers, and the raids continued. Fontenay was as ruthless as his predecessor, but only ruled for a short time. For the Spaniards, man, the pesky Spaniards, they're not going to give up on it. Once again, they decide to head back to Tortuga, and they win. Now they drive the pirates out. They founded a new colony in 1655. And then for the next 20 or so years, Tortuga just kind of bounced back and forth between the Spanish and the French. New waves of Buccaneers kind of coming and going before eventually a new pirate hotspot, Petit Gove. Petit Gove, there we go, replaced Tortuga as the haven for pirates in the Caribbean, So, eventually, Atlantic City gives way to fucking Vegas. Whatever analogy you want to use there. 1690s, by the end of the 17th century, the age of the Buccaneers kind of begins to draw to a close as most European countries stop using these privateers. The Dutch made piracy illegal in 1673. The English followed suit in 1680, and then the French finally caved in and made it illegal in 1697. I love that the French waited another 17 years after the British. Like this, well, maybe the pirates are not so bad. Maybe the pirates are just, misunderstood. I have no idea what accent that was. I don't know why I thought I could pull off a French accent. But now there was a culture of piracy, and legal or not, some of these guys are not going anywhere. There's too much money to be made. They established a trade for themselves. Just because the government's like, no, you can't do that job anymore. They're not going to be like, fuck, okay, that's fine. You get a little taste for that pirate booty, you're not going to give it up. Just because some king 5,000 miles away says to quit it. And so the Buccaneers and privateers become true pirates, doing as they wished. It expanded out from the Caribbean. In the 1690s, a lot of these pirates headed further east, all the way to the Indian Ocean, all the way to the Red Sea, around Middle East there, around the coast of Saudi Arabia, between Saudi Arabia and Africa. Plundering merchant ships belonging to the East India Trading Company, among many other merchants, taking cotton, silk, indigo, dye, salt, tea, opium, ball sacks. I don't know, whatever they felt like taking. 1713, 1714, piracy begins to hit its height following the end of the Queen Anne's War, which had been fought since 1702, alongside the War of Spanish Succession between the British, French, and the Spanish over essentially who got to have what in the Americas. That's what it basically boils down to. So at the end of the war, there's these thousands of seamen from these, from all these countries, including Britain's paramilitary, kind of privateers, and they're all relieved of military duty. And they're unemployed now. That's not good. The result is you got a large number of trained, idle sailors at a time when, cross-Atlantic colonial shipping trade is booming. And one of these sailors is Blackbeard. So let's bounce on out of this timeline and talk about the dickhead of the sea.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
So if you remember from earlier, Mr. Edward Thatch was listed as a mariner or sailor in the Royal Navy aboard the HMS Windsor in 1706. And I don't mean that as mariner or sailor like he's one of the others. It's just I'm trying to say that mariner means sailor. And I only say that because I didn't know that, because I don't know a lot of stuff until I looked this stuff up, which is part of the reason I love doing this show. And then by 1714, at the latest, he's no longer employed by the British. The 18th century author Charles Johnson, that guy who wrote the first big book on pirates, claimed that Teach or Thatch, he called him Teach because a lot of the papers did because of some printing error, was for some time a sailor operating from Jamaica on privateer ships during the war, and that he, quote, had often distinguished himself for his uncommon boldness and personal courage. Well, at what point during the war, Thatch joined the fighting is, in keeping with the record of most of his life before he became a pirate, unknown. But it sounds like he was a fierce soldier. And when you hear about the end of his life, this description seems very accurate. He definitely didn't go down without a fight. So shortly after the war's end, in all likelihood, Thatch moved from Jamaica to New Providence, now known as the Bahamas, and found seafaring work in Nassau. A little history about Nassau. In 1695, Governor Nicholas Trott rebuilt the town of Charlestown, which had been destroyed by a Spanish attack in 1684, added a fort, and both were called Nassau. However, the new fort was heavily damaged in Spanish attack in 1700, and the colonists eventually abandoned the fort in 1703 after a French and Spanish attack. So many attacks back then. Everyone's getting attacked all the time. Due to abandonment of the fort, New Providence soon became a home base for pirates. A new Tortuga do. By 1713, there were over 1,000 pirates in Nassau, and they outnumbered the 400 to 500 law-abiding inhabitants. In the fall of 1715, Nassau's pirate population grew from dozens to hundreds. Well, I mean, that's not by dozens to hundreds. God dang it. Sorry, right. The dates on these things bounce around so much from article to article. But anyway, 1713, excuse me, not 1715. Initially, it grew from dozens to hundreds after an early hurricane wrecked the annual Spanish treasure fleet on the nearby beaches of Florida, scattering bodies and gold coins across what has since been called the Treasure Coast. At year's end, Henry Jennings, another former Jamaican privateer, arrived in Nassau with 87,000 pounds in recovered Spanish treasure. Wow, man. Bringing some money to that area. Prostitutes, smugglers, escaped slaves, adventure seekers all flow into Nassau, which expands into a city of huts and tents. Kind of an open-air Las Vegas and tropical Deadwood all rolled into one. That sounds fucking great. That sounds even better than Tortuga. Sounds like you got a better island to be on. You know, I like a tropical Deadwood. That sounds sweet. Again, as long as you don't get stabbed or shot. Well, after shoring up in Fort Nassau, the former privateers brokered a black market trading network with unscrupulous English merchants at Harbor Island and Eleuthera, two Bahamian islands 50 miles northeast. From this well-defended and supplied position, the pirates could spring out into the Florida Straits, a major seaway that, due to prevailing winds, most Europe-bound ships were compelled to use. So they could go there, capture some prizes, get some of that pirate booty, quickly carry them back to the safety of their base. And I should note that during the chaos of colonization, when colonists are constantly being taxed by one foreign government and attacked by others, a lot of people didn't mind the pirates. You know, they didn't see them as any worse, or maybe sometimes even better than the government they were under, and definitely better than the other governments trying to attack them. A lot of them kind of thought of themselves as Robin Hoods of the sea. You know, quote, "They vilify us, the scoundrels do, when there is only this difference," the pirate Sam Bellany once told a captive. "They rob the poor under the cover of law, and we plunder the rich under the cover of our own courage." That's fucking pirate talk right there. These pirates in the second decade of the 18th century were a force to be reckoned with. They had ships just as well armed as the British, French, and Spanish navies, and oftentimes more well-trained and battle-tested men aboard these ships. Well, around 1716, Thatch joins the crew of Captain Benjamin Hornigold, a renowned pirate who operated from New Providence's safe waters. One of those Nassau sounds like Nassau almost. One of those Nassau pirates. Well, in 1716, Hornigold placed Thatch in charge of a sloop he had taken as a prize in a previous attack. Now, a sloop is a small one-mast ship, fore and aft mainsail, and a jib. They had a crew of usually no more than about 75 men, up to 14 cannons. Pirates loved them because they could outmaneuver larger ships. Probably weren't as much fun to travel on. You know, they didn't have the accommodations inside, a little cramped in there. Early 1717, Hornigold and Thatch, each captaining the sloop, set out for the mainland. They captured a boat carrying 120 barrels of flour out of Havana. Shortly thereafter, took 100 barrels of wine from a sloop out of Bermuda. A few days later, they stopped a vessel sailing from Madeira to Charlestown, South Carolina. Took some more shit. In September of 1716, Thatch and Hornigold encountered Stede Bonnet, a landowner and military officer from a wealthy family who had turned to piracy earlier that year. Bonnet's crew of about 70 were reportedly dissatisfied with his command. It wasn't a good pirate. He just sounded like maybe like a rich dude who wanted to be a pirate, kind of a wannabe. And so with Bonnet's permission, Thatch took control of his ship, the Revenge. The pirates' flotilla now consists of 3 ships: Thatch on Revenge, Thatch's old sloop, and Hornigold's Ranger. By October, and flotilla, by the way, just a group of boats or ships. By October, another vessel had been captured and added to the small fleet. The sloops Robert of Philadelphia and Good Intent of Dublin were stopped on the 22nd of October, 1717. Their cargo holds were emptied. As a former British privateer, though, Hornigold would only attack his enemies, like his old enemies. He wouldn't attack the Brits. But for his crew, the sight of British vessels filled with valuable cargo passing by unharmed became a little too much, They didn't want to go fucking half pirate. They didn't sign up to be pirates to be like part-time pirates, They wanted to fuck everything up. That's part of the fun of being a pirate. Is, you get to go after everybody. And at some point, toward the end of 1717, Hornigold is demoted. Now, whether Thatch had any involvement in this decision is unknown, But Hornigold quickly retired from piracy. He took a ship Ranger and one of the sloops, leaving Thatch with Revenge and the remaining sloop. Well, Blackbeard didn't waste time once he became captain to get busy with some serious pirating. Over the first 3 weeks of October 1717, Thatch terrorized the approaches to the Chesapeake Bay, Philadelphia, and New York Harbor, never staying more than 48 hours in one place, captured at least 15 vessels, becoming the most feared pirate in the Americas practically overnight, traumatized captains pouring into Philadelphia and New York with tales of woe, cargoes thrown into the sea, pirates leaving vessels and their crews to run aground after hacking down their masts and cutting loose their anchors. An entire cargo of indentured servants whisked away, perhaps because they wanted to join the pirates' ranks, as so many other members of captured ships did. Pirates now swarm in America and increase their numbers by almost every vessel they take, Philadelphia merchant James Logan wrote to a friend in London after Blackbeard's raids. If speedy care be not taken, they will become formidable, and they know our government can make no defense. And then, on the November 28, 1717, the man soon to become known as Blackbeard uses 2 ships to attack a French merchant vessel off the coast of St. Vincent. They each fired a broadside across its bulwarks, killing several of its crew, forcing the captain to surrender. The ship was La Concorde, a large French Guineaman carrying a cargo of slaves, and Thatch would turn it into his signature vessel. Thatch and his crew sailed up from south along St. Vincent and the Grenadines to Bequia, where they disembarked her crew and cargo and converted the ship for their own use. The crew of La Concorde were given the smaller of Thatch's 2 sloops, and Thatch immediately renamed La Concorde the Queen Anne's Revenge. Right? Remember the Queen Anne's War? Well, now this is the Queen Anne's Revenge. That's a fucking badass title. Equipped her with 40 guns and now controlled one of the most famous and feared pirate ships of all time. And for Thatch, a.k.a. Blackbeard, it was the perfect pirate ship. Quote, slavers had all the right elements. They were large, extremely fast, and could carry a lot of ornament. They could easily be converted to a large, totally open, flush deck that could house many people and allow them to easily move around during boarding action. So that's from a pirate expert named Daniel. I didn't write down his last name, so whatever. Blackbeard brought his ship to a remote anchorage where his crew refitted her as a pirate frigate, renaming her Queen Anne's Revenge. Yep, like I said, they kept food and valuables, of course, but what of her human cargo? Well, pirate vessels were among the few places in European America where slaves could free themselves. A remarkable number of pirates were of African origin, according to accounts of captives and pirates brought to trial. There were more than 30 Africans in Bellamy's crew, Sam Bellamy the pirate, and in the months after capturing the Concorde, witnesses report as many as 70 serving with Blackbeard. Most of these black sailors on pirate ships were not slaves, said an expert on that area. We have an account of a group of rebellious slaves on one of the islands rowing offshore to join a pirate ship. And the pirates knew they could count on them to be totally committed and fight to the end because their only other option was a life of plantation slavery. Yeah, I mean, yeah, fuck yeah. If that's your options, you can fucking pirate or plantation slave. I'm gonna go with fucking pirate. Like, I would normally be scared as shit to be a pirate, but if that's the only other choice, I'm like, all right, give me a cutlass and throw me on the boat. Maybe. Actually, I don't know. I might just fucking work the field, honestly, because I get so sick on the water. I mean, not saying it would be any fun at all to be a slave, because I know it'd be fucking terrible, but if it was like fucking being on a plantation and having even having a dickhead boss and being treated horribly, or always being on a boat, I think I would actually fucking be in the field. I get so sick on a boat. I don't know what I was thinking. I could be a pirate for a second there. I've been on one boat in the ocean, and it was like a 3-hour ride, and I threw up or felt like I was going to throw up again for 2.5 hours after 3 hours. It was fucking terrible. Okay. But not everyone was seen as a potential recruit. Of the 455 slaves who were still alive when Blackbeard intercepted La Concorde, all but 61 were given back to Captain Dossett, along with a small sloop, which he used to ferry them back to Martinique to be sold at auction. So, I don't know. Shouldn't make pirates sound too idealistic. So around this time, the moniker of Blackbeard is born, when another captain he had captured described him as, quote, a tall, spare man with a very black beard, which he wore very long. The legend, that's how the legend of Blackbeard got started. And Blackbeard understood the power of appearance in creating his fearsome legend. He understood it helped strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. He was tall, with broad shoulders. He wore knee-length boots, dark clothing, a big wide hat, sometimes a long coat of brightly colored silk or velvet. May not have had an eye patch or a wooden leg or a parrot, but he did have all those pistols hanging off his chest. He carried a bunch of knives openly. Had his cutlass, which is a short, curved sword favored by pirates. He was a fucking scary-looking son of a bitch. Which I can imagine you have to be to command a fleet of pirates. He had that big beard with all the ribbons in it, and when he went into battle, he had lit fuses hanging off his fucking hat to make him look like he came out of hell. But I get it though, You don't gain respect of other pirates if you're like, hey guys, do you guys want to go do some pirating today? Oh my goodness, it would be so much fun to do some pirating, right? Hey guys, let's get some snacks and some juice and fuel up for our adventures, and then let's go see what fun we can have today for our pirating trips. No one's going to follow that guy anywhere. You got to be scary. You got to intimidate other intimidating pirates into following your scary ass out on the high seas. The guy who was like, hey guys, does anyone have applesauce? I can make it if you don't have it. That guy's fucking getting sent off in he's a nice guy, but he's getting sent off in a fucking boat. Or he's getting left on the beach. Okay. You got to have a scary pirate flag, too. Blackbeard's flag, man. He had a scary one. It has a white horned skeleton on a black background. The skeleton's holding a spear pointing at a red heart. The red blood drops near the heart. Skeleton's holding a glass, making a toast to the devil. Skeleton obviously stands for death. It stands for enemy crews who choose to put up a fight. The speared heart meant that no quarter would be asked or given. You're not gonna be given quarter. You're gonna be fucking killed if you're given a fight. Blackbeard's flag was designed to intimidate opposing ship crews into surrendering, and it probably did. Probably surrendering without a fight. All right, and then there's a lot of other stories, mostly undocumented, possibly just the stuff of legend, possibly real, about how scary Blackbeard may have been. Let's talk about a few of those. Now, before I get into exactly these how scary these stories are, or whatever these stories are, there are historians who think it's bullshit. According to historian Colin Woodward, who wrote Republic of Pirates, published in 2008, quote, in the dozens of eyewitness accounts of his victims, there is not a single instance in which he killed anyone prior to his final fatal battle with the Royal Navy, end quote. He says Blackbeard's fearsome reputation as a violent cutthroat was made up by authorities to legitimize the hunt for him. Maybe. I mean, there is a lot of other stories saying he did a bunch of awful things. So who knows? We don't have a time machine. But there definitely are some colorful legends and vivid contemporary newspaper portrayals of him being cruel and terrible. Stories that made sea captains and sailors of his day fear him. Like one tale claims he shot his own first mate, saying, quote, if he didn't shoot one or two... Oh, I thought that was Blackbeard talking for a second. The local newspaper said if he didn't shoot one or two crewmen now and then, they'd forget who he was. Another legend is that having had too much to drink, he said to his crew, come, let us make a hell of our own and try how long we can bear it. And then they went into the ship's hold, they closed the hatches, filled several pots with brimstone, and set it on fire. Soon the men were coughing, gasping for air from the sulfurous flames. All except Blackbeard scrambled outside. When Blackbeard finally emerged, he just snarled, damn ye yellow-bellied cowards. I'm a better man than all ye milksops put together. That's an excerpt from an old book from Captain Charles Johnson I mentioned earlier at the beginning, General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates. Calling dudes milksops, man. That's some harsh shit. Milksop is a person who is indecisive and lacks courage. I feel like it's the 18th century equivalent of a pussy. Stop being such a milksop. Get back to work, you big baby. Another Blackbeard legend is that before he sailed upon his adventures, he married a young creature of about 16 years of age. And this was supposedly his 14th wife in this tale. And then he lays with her all night. And then it was his custom to invite 5 or 6 of his brutal companions to come ashore. And he would force her to prostitute herself to all of them, one after another, before his face. That one sounds a bit over the top. I'm going to chalk that one up to some sensationalistic journalism to sway public opinion away from him. My favorite legend concerns the possibility of buried treasure. Who doesn't love a buried treasure tale? By all accounts, Blackbeard's wealth was immense by mid-1718, and popular accounts suggested that he was very fond of burying parts of his treasure all along the Carolina coast. The most melodramatic stories revolving around this claim that he would choose a sailor to row him to land with the treasure chest, but then would return rowing himself alone. 2 men leave, 1 man returns. That's the deal you make when you deal with Blackbeard. Arr, matey. Who knows if any of that is true, right? What is true is he stole and looted a lot in early 1718. With the Queen Anne's Revenge at the center of his flotilla, Blackbeard raced up the Lesser Antilles, the island chain ringing the outer arc of the Caribbean like a string of pearls, leaving fear and destruction in his wake. Events described in the testimonies of some of those who he held captive and letters to colonial officials whose islands he terrorized. He set fire to part of Guadalupe town, burned a fleet of merchant vessels in the shadow of the British fort of St. Kitts, caused the governor of the Leeward Islands to abandon a tour of his colony aboard HMS Seaford for fear the frigate would be captured. Blackbeard and his crew repaired to St. Croix, burned an English sloop for amusement. Just for amusement. They've gone fucking full pirate now. Just burning other people's ships for shits and giggles. Then they sailed for Puerto Rico, where in early December, they learned shocking news from the captain of a merchant sloop they'd seized. They learned that apparently King George I had decreed that any pirate who surrendered to a British governor by September 1718 would be pardoned for all piracies committed before January 5th, and could even keep their plunder. That shows how sick of pirates shit the crown was. They were just like, yeah, you can keep the fucking treasure. You can keep it. Just for fuck's sake, please stop burning our ships down for fun, you assholes. How are we supposed to terrorize and subjugate the natives and overtax our own colonists if you guys keep taking and or burning all of our shit? Well, this potential pardon timed out well for Blackbeard. All right, Blackbeard has spent much of February, March, and April of 1718 in the islands off Honduras and Belize, seizing ships filled with wood and molasses instead of gold and silver. All right, he wanted that Spanish gold and silver. Instead, he got some Mexican wood. No, he didn't get it. He wasn't in Mexico. He got some Honduran wood, some Honduran molasses, and a large flotilla of pirates are not interested in molasses. They didn't sign up for molasses raids. All right, they want that cursed gold. They want the jewels in their plunderings. Armity. Surprised I haven't said that 100 more times by now. Despite capturing a huge number of vessels, now it's in my head. Sorry, now it's in my head. Armity. I just want to say it over and over, but I won't. His enormous crew had fairly little wealth to show for it. Morale was poor, especially when they ran out of rum for a little time. That's really no good, man. That's no good. You got hundreds of bloodthirsty dudes out at sea with no gold, no cursed gold, to buy some womanly comfort when they reach their little fucking pirate town in Nassau or wherever. And now they got no rum to drink away the reality that they have no gold. A damned confusion amongst us, Blackbeard reportedly wrote in his journal, which was found and remarked on by naval officers after his death and quoted by the author of the General History of Pirates, but has since been lost. Rogues a plotting and great talk of separation. Fucking rogues, man. Man, you always got to watch your back for rogues when you're out at the high sea, when you're a pirate captain. That's probably one of the worst parts about being a pirate captain is keeping an eye out for rogues. While he was able to replenish the liquor supply and head off mutiny, Blackbeard was desperate for some real treasure. Well, in the spring, Blackbeard appointed Queen Anne's Revenge, or appointed it, Queen Anne's Revenge North. His 4-vessel fleet dropped into Nassau, perhaps to sell goods. Then even tried their luck diving among the Spanish treasure fleet wrecks nearby Florida coast. Man, reduced to scavenging instead of some proper plundering. In May, he makes a bold move out of desperation, blockades the entrance to Charleston's harbor for a full 6 days, captures every vessel that comes or goes. Unfortunately, the cargoes he intercepts are useless, mostly barrels of pitch, tar, and rice. Improvising, Blackbeard seizes passengers instead, sending word to the town that he wished to ransom them. In the end, his crew of 400 left the area with plunder worth less than 2,000 pounds. And now, after surely bringing some heat from the British on themselves after the Charleston blockade, they needed a hideaway. And the creeks and inlets of poor, sparsely populated North Carolina had hideaways in abundance. So what happens next is a matter of scholarly debate. We do know that on June 3rd, 1718, about a couple months before the pardon deadline, Blackbeard guides his fleet into Topsail Inlet, home to the tiny hamlet of Fishtown, now Beaufort. Bonnet's Revenge and the fleet's 2 other sloops went first, negotiating the narrow, comma-shaped channel to the village. Queen Anne's Revenge runs aground, apparently while under full sail. The pirates tried to get their flagship off the shoal, but only managed to sink one of their sloops in the effort. We know that Blackbird, the blackbird singing in the dead of night. How's that, huh? You probably thought, like, how the hell did he get all the Beatles to fucking hop on the mic there? How did he get the Beatles to hum a song that they've forgotten the words to, even though they wrote it? How did he do that? No, Blackbeard, he sends Bonnet away with the Revenge before marooning dozens of his remaining crew on a large sandbank. He then set off in the remaining sloop with his closest crewmen, quote, 40 white men and 60 Negroes, all the company's plunder, takes all the treasure. Now, one of his captains, David Harriet, later told authorities it was generally believed that Thatch ran his vessel aground on purpose to get rid of the riffraff, man. This guy fucking cut down on the riffraff. He's got a lot of riffraff. I feel like that's a common problem when you get a big old pirate flotilla going. The more pirates you get, fucking the more riffraff you're going to get. You got probably 3 riffraff for every solid pirate. And he wants to save that remaining treasure, what he has left. It's been slim pickings the last few months. He wants to save it for his best mates. Now they're all crammed aboard the small Spanish-built sloop. Blackbeard and his remaining followers head for their final sanctuary, the tiny hamlet of Bath, North Carolina, located up a narrow creek from Pamlico Sound, a day's sail from Beaufort. It's a frontier settlement just over 10 years old and comprising fewer than 24 homes. It had only 100 residents, but it was also, in effect, the capital of North Carolina and counted Governor Charles Eden among its residents. Now, no eyewitness accounts of the initial meeting between Blackbeard and Eden have survived, but it must have gone well. Eden was a wealthy English nobleman who governed an impoverished colony spread out over what was literally a backwater, vast tracts of pestilent, low-lying cypress forests, pierced by sluggish, tea-colored creeks, inlets, and swamps. Most of its approximately 20,000 colonists were just penniless, outnumbered by aggrieved Indians who just 6 years before had nearly wiped Bath and the rest of the colony off the map. Blackbeard's men, they wanted a pardon, remember? There was that pardon earlier that had been talked about. They kind of ignored the part about you're supposed to stop committing crimes, and then you could get your pardon in September. They're like, well, we're going to keep doing the crimes part. We're going to keep robbing shit, but we would also still like the pardon. They wanted one, and they wanted it to even include their blockade of Charleston, and that happened after they were, because you were supposed to stop by January 5th. That happened well after that, but they're like, I don't care. This is the deal we would like. And they offered the colony something in return. Like, first, with their arrival, the population of Bath is going to double. And the newcomers now are going to be armed combat veterans, men who could help defend the settlement, from the angry Native Americans or whoever else if war resumed. Second, they had money, and they had the means and inclination to bring in more, so long as Governor Eden refrained from asking too many questions about where it came from. And in the end, Eden granted all of them a pardon and later a legal title to the sloop they'd arrived in. So a lot of people, what they think he did is, even though he loved the Queen Anne's Revenge, he marooned that, or ran it aground, marooned a bunch of sailors, so he could cut down on who he had to split the loot with, and then took kind of his best guys that he could still use as a fucking crew to commit more pirating acts, go get a pardon from everybody, and then after getting the pardon, commit some more pirating on the side. Well, Blackbeard and several of his men, they settle in Bath, build some homes, and lead what might appear at a distance to be honest lives. But come on, that's not going to happen. Blackbeard even marries a local girl, a fact that reaches the ears of the Royal Navy officers in nearby Virginia who noted the development in their dispatches to London. But in reality, the pirates were intent on slipping down the creek into the open sea to prey on vessels passing up and down the eastern seaboard, to and from Chesapeake Bay. Once a pirate, always a pirate. Now if Blackbeard had shaved his crazy fucking ribboned lunatic beard, started going by Ed or Eddie, maybe you could believe he changed his ways. But come on, he's still Blackbeard. He's still a yo-ho-ho in it. As later court testimony reveals, Blackbeard set up a camp on Oracoke Island on the Outer Banks, where they could sort of sort their plunder, repack it for shipment and sale back in Bath. It was the perfect arrangement, a new Nassau. Only better that it had a sovereign government, and therefore the pirates might well have assumed that they were not going to be subject to British invasion. Well, that's not going to last very long. Blackbeard may have had Eden in his pocket, but the lieutenant governor of Virginia was another matter. Alexander Spotswood had been keeping tabs on Blackbeard for months, even sending spies into North Carolina to, quote, make particular inquiry after the pirates. Merchants had bombarded him with complaints about Blackbeard. But when he learned of the Rose Emilia incident, Spotswood later wrote, I thought it necessary to put a stop to the further progress of the robberies, because there was just one robbery too many. He didn't have the authority to send an expedition into another colony, but Spotswood was not one to be constrained by legal and ethical niceties. Legislators were already working to have him thrown out of office for various power grabs and for squandering tax revenue on Williamsburg's fantastically opulent new governor's palace. Through blind trust, he would ultimately give himself 85,000 acres of public land. Jesus. An area that came to be known as Spotsylvania County. He gave himself a fucking county by nefarious means. He contacted the captains of 2 naval frigates at anchor in Hampton Roads and hatched an audacious and illegal plan to wipe out the fearsome pirate. Because remember, he's doing illegal stuff on the sly, but he was given a pardon, so you're not supposed to come after him. And these are kind of important details about Spotswood, I think, by the way. It just goes to show that pirates weren't the only plunderers back then. The local governors were stealing more shit than the pirates probably ever could. Governments, giant religious institutions, big businesses, they're always the biggest thieves, or among the biggest thieves. Not that all of them are, but, like how the banks got $700 billion in taxpayer money to bail them out back in 2008 out of the financial crisis they themselves created. $700 billion is way more than the combined sum of every dollar that has ever been robbed by any bank robber in U.S. history. Fucking assholes. And none of those CEOs or high-level shareholders, worth tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars are ever going to give a penny of it back. Anyway, not knowing if Blackbeard would be in Bath or on Orcroak, the naval captains launched a two-pronged invasion of their southern neighbor. One led a contingent of armed men overland on horseback, arriving at Eden's house in Bath 6 days later. The other dispatched 60 men under Lieutenant Robert Maynard. If this guy has a middle name, it is fucking badass or psychopath. You're going to find out why later. In two small, unarmed sloops the crooked Spotswood had provided. They arrived at Orcoke 5 days later. Blackbeard's sloop was anchored there. All right, so this is the big battle. The following morning, Lieutenant Maynard's men attack. Blackbeard's crew of 20, he's got just a small little crew hanging out with him right now, had spent the night drinking, getting drunk on some rum, on that pirate rum, and might have been surprised at anchor had one of Maynard's sloops not run aground coming into the anchorage. Well, after one of Maynard's sloops runs aground and Blackbeard spots him, there was a shouted exchange between the two captains from their boats, which I think is awesome. Maynard's account stating, "At our first salutation, he drank damnation to me and my men, whom he'd called cowardly puppies, saying he would neither give nor take quarter." Jesus, man, what a badass! I'm gonna drink to your death. Throws back some rum. Calls them some slur, cowardly puppies. Maybe that was like the asshole of that time, and then just says like, dude, we're not gonna be surrendered. You're not gonna take us alive, and we're not gonna let you live. Wow, Blackbeard, man, taunting them from the deck, calling them cowardly puppies, almost as bad as a milksop. Well, by the time the naval sailors got their small vessel free, Blackbeard had gotten his sloop underway and greeted them with a broadside that killed or injured many. So they pulled up fucking, the side of the ship facing the other side of the ship, cannons fire, boom, melee, on Maynard's ship. But as the pirates sailed for open water, a musket ball severed a halyard on their sloop, causing a sail to drop and a critical loss in speed. The second sloop, Lieutenant Maynard's, caught up to them, only to receive another broadside of deadly grape shot and a salvo of hand grenades, fucking throwing old pirate hand grenades. In seconds, 21 members of Maynard's crew were killed or wounded. Staring down at the smoke-veiled carnage, Blackbeard concluded that the battle had been won. He ordered his sloop to come alongside Maynard's sloop and board it so his men could take control of it. Blackbeard was the first. I love that, man. He was the first to step aboard. He's not going to send some little scallywag on to board this ship first. He's like, man, I don't care, man. I'm gonna go out first. That's like the general of an army marching out in front. It's crazy. He had a rope in his hands to lash the vessels together. And how crazy was pirates boarding your ship, by the way? Oh man, that must have sucked. That must have been terrible. See some black flagged ship floating your way. You can't outmaneuver it. You can't hide from it. You can't outgun it. Then suddenly they're floated right up next to you. Boards thrown down. Dirty, crazy-looking, cackling pirates running across planks, all fucking scurvy-looking, onto your ship, loaded up with knives, cutlasses, crazy eyes, pistols, rifles. Literally nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You can wait for the pirates, hope for the best, or you can dive into the cold, dark, shark-infested waters of the Atlantic. Fuck that. Remind me never to be an 18th century sea merchant. Well, Blackbeard and his men, they run aboard the sloop, preparing to plunder another ship, just as they've done 100 times before. But this time, little surprise, motherfucker. Maynard and a dozen uninjured sailors were hiding, laying in wait for Blackbeard and his crew, and suddenly they just pop up from the hold, where they've been hiding down there, and they engage the pirates in hand-to-hand combat. Oh, it's on now. It's a pirate sword fight. Now, in a scene that would inspire many Hollywood movies, the dashing naval lieutenant and the arch pirate face each other, swords drawn. Maynard made the first sword thrust, the point of his sword against Blackbeard's cartridge box. Bends his sword to the hilt. Blackbeard broke the guard of it and wounded Maynard's fingers, but did not disable him. Whereupon he jumped back and threw away his sword and fired his pistol, which wounded Blackbeard. Then a crew member struck in between them with his sword and, depending on the account, either slashed Blackbeard's throat, killing him immediately, or cut his face badly before being attacked by another pirate himself, and then Blackbeard tried loading his pistol one last time before slumping over and dying from blood loss. Now, various accounts state that when Blackbeard finally did go down, he went down with, quote, 5 shot in him and 20 dismal cuts in several parts of his body. That's a quote from Maynard. And then the second sloop arrives to overwhelm the rest of Blackbeard's men. And then Maynard cuts Blackbeard's fucking head off. Cuts his head off. And needing proof of Blackbeard's death in order to claim the bounty offered by Governor Spotswood, which is only 100 pounds, by the way, cheap ass, hangs Blackbeard's severed head from the front of the ship and sails it home. Returns to Virginia with 14 prisoners, 9 white, 5 black. Jesus, man. This Lieutenant Maynard sounds maybe even more ruthless than Blackbeard himself. Blackbeard's body, by the way, never given to grave. His body was just thrown into Pamlico Sound. His head given as a trophy to Spotswood, who had it displayed on a tall pole in Hampton Roads, a site now known as Blackbeard's Point. But while the governors have been all but forgotten, the pirate has lived on, man. More famous in death than he ever was even in life. And he was pretty famous in life that last year. Now there's some pretty cool legends about his death. One of my favorites, man, is that his headless body, after being thrown overboard, swam itself between 2 and 7 times around Maynard's ship before finally sinking. That's fucking crazy. That's nonsense, but that's an awesome legend. You know, there's people telling that in old taverns in the early 1700s out there on Court Carolina. Say, "Oh, Blackbeard, I was there. They threw his headless body off into the water, and then it swam around the ship for 7 times before sinking. Sometimes you can still see it swimming today." That's hard doing that pirate's voice for too long. Ever since his death, it's been said that Blackbeard's ghost haunts the spot now known as Teach's Hole. It keeps being referred to as Teach, by the way, just because of that. Again, it was like a fucking newspaper fuck up. And so if you're like, why do you keep referring to him as Thatch? Thatch is actually, from everything I've researched, the appropriate proper last name of Blackbeard, but Teach is what became common. So Teach's Hole. Many people have reported seeing a strange light moving beneath the water in the Teach's Hole Cove. This ghostly light is thought by some to be Blackbeard's spirit swimming through the water, searching for its missing head. There's even those who believe that on stormy nights you can hear Blackbeard's voice calling out in the wind. On nights when an angry wind is roaring and the hard rain is coming down, many people have heard a horrible roaring sound coming from the hidden cove. They say that it's an unearthly noise, and if you listen just right, it sounds like a pained human bellowing, "Where's my head?" Well, that's it. That is Blackbeard. That's the first pirate Timesuck, you time suckers. Someday, I'm sure we'll do another, man. I like talking about pirate stuff. Maybe William Kidd, talk about his buried treasure legends. And while pirates are considered the bad guys of history, it's hard not to sympathize with the pirates, too. For example, pirate crews were being treated better than the British Navy crews were of their day. Blackbeard may have been less corrupt than Lieutenant Governor Spotswood, for example. Furthermore, pirate crews on their ships they were there by choice, as opposed to the Navy crews, many of whom had kind of been forced into service, been pressed into service. Pirate ships were also essentially democratic institutions. The pirate captain would be elected by the crew and generally selected on the basis of competence and fairness as a leader. I don't know that Blackbeard was selected that way. He sounds like he maybe ruled just by fear. The captain's decisions on where and when to sail would be put to a vote. His authority became absolute only during battle. Again, this was a stark contrast to the British Navy at the time, where the captaincy of the ship was based more on being born into the right family than on ability to competently lead a crew. It's also important to remember what the pirates were stealing and who they were stealing it from. A large portion of the vessels passing through the Atlantic at this time were holding enslaved human beings as cargo. When intercepting a slave ship, pirate crews could would routinely free those otherwise destined for a life of unimaginable misery. These men would be offered the opportunity to join the ship's crew, with chances of their being able to return home being pretty slim. It's an offer many of them took up. Records show that as much as half of any given pirate ship's crew in the early 18th century would have been composed of freed Africans. Even Blackbeard's trusted second-in-command, who died fighting with him at Teach's Hole in that final battle, was an African-American known as Black Caesar. So while many pirates did kill and plunder, they were killing and plundering from people who were themselves killing, plundering, enslaving, and exploiting lands which had been invaded and were held by force. So what seemed to offend the authorities so much about the pirates was not their tactics, but that someone else was getting a cut of the same action. Man, isn't that the same old story, right? Governments hate thieves, mainly because they don't like competition. And with that, let's yo-ho-ho-ho into some top 5 takeaways.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Number 1, don't go calling somebody a milksop unless you are ready to fight. Them there's fighting words. Even worse than telling someone they're a cowardly puppy. Number 2, Tortuga in the 1640s and Nassau around 1715 sound like a couple of great places to be a young, horny, tough, adventure-seeking, good-time-having dude. Pirating, drinking, whoring, no laws. Sounds like a good place to get some really cool stories or not live very long. Number 3, who gives a shit if Blackbeard's real last name was Teach or Thatch? All that matters is the name Blackbeard and the fear it projected. A fear enhanced by wearing lit fuses under his hat in battle, carrying a chest full of pistols, and being such a badass it took 5 bullets and 20 sword slashes to take him down. Number 4, early pirates were known as buccaneers and privateers, and were given legal freedom to attack whoever they wanted as long as it wasn't someone from their own nation. And then those government-sponsored pirates inevitably turned on their own governments and were declared thieves. Kind of like how Panama's Manuel Noriega was trained by the CIA, who were cool with him trafficking drugs until he stopped following U.S. orders, and then he was a ruthless dictator of Panama. Got to get rid of him now. He's not a puppet. Maybe a Manuel Noriega timesuck down the road. Number 5, Blackbeard was only known as Blackbeard for 1 year. Dude, he took over the pirate reins from former privateer Captain Benjamin Hornigold at the end of 1717, and then he died on November 22nd, 1718. At roughly the age of 38. God, he did a lot of shit in a year. He attacked so many places, floated all around, the fucking Atlantic, even gotten pardoned for a little while, even settled down for a tiny bit over in, over on the coast, Carolina coast. Did that in a year in his late 30s, man. Immortalized himself forever, gave Johnny Depp most of the money he'll ever make, and gave me some good times scaring my kid at Disneyland. Thanks, Blackbeard.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Well, thanks for going on a pirate adventure there, mateys. Hope you had as much fun as I did. That was a good time, man. That was a good time. I got some tour dates coming up on Easter weekend, April 14 through 16. I'll be at Hilarities in downtown Cleveland. I'll be at the Tempe Improv Thursday and Friday only, April 6 and 7. I'll be at Punchline in San Francisco, May 10 through 13. That's the club where I recorded the Chinese Affection LP. Love that club. A bunch more tour dates on the website. Click Stand Up Tour and more on timesuckpodcast.com. And enjoy the next few days, everyone. Only a short time until Friday when I invade your brain with some Dianetics. Friday is time to get clear. It's time to get audited. Right? It's time to go full Travolta. Time to go full Tom Cruise. Until then, use that Amazon button when you do your online shopping. Treat yourself to a tight new Timesuck t-shirt, 4X and 5X, some bigger shirts being added to the shop as you listen, if they're not there already. I heard your requests, working on it. And send me some pics of you wearing those hot cotton blends. And most importantly, keep those minds wide open and keep on sucking.